Yep, that's Rudd, deep inside the dungeon munching on monster meat like a kid that had tasted a happy meal for the first time. However, unlike the kid, what he was eating was taboo for humans. His twisted arm and other wounds started to heal as the mana from the monster flowed through his body. The surge in power prompted him to let out a primitive yell, giving him the strength to cut and chew his way through the beasts that surrounded him. Before this traumatic event, Rudd was the lowest-ranked adventurer with the innate skill that made him immune to abnormal states like poisoning. Surprisingly, everyone thought his skill was useless for adventuring, since it didn't have any application in an active fight. To make matters worse, Rudd didn't have any combat skills, so they bullied him as no one wanted the hopeless loser in their party. The only way for him to make a living as an adventurer was to harvest an herb that purified miasma. Rudd was basically a gardener channeling his inner retired old lady. There was huge demand for the herb since adventurers used it to cleanse the weakening effects from the built-up miasma during their exploration of the dungeon. Rudd was able to spend as much time in the maze since his innate skill nullified the negative effects of the miasma. He went to his secret spot in the maze to harvest the herb when he was attacked by monster rats looking like Master Splinter's evil cousins. The weakling struggled to defeat such low-level creatures, but was saved by an unexpected reckless fireball attack. It was the trio Magnus, Rigurdo, and Lond. Magnus sarcastically apologized for almost hitting him with that attack. Rudd was familiar with them since he often saw them at the guild hall. It soon became clear that they had tailed Rudd to steal his harvesting spot. The trio intimidated Rudd to stand down, and even made him thank them for saving him. The loser returned to town where the humiliation continued. He walked into a tavern and caught the attention of some experienced adventurers for all the wrong reasons. They knocked him to the ground and threatened to turn him into a burnt toast if he didn't get out. They didn't want an eyesore like him to ruin their meal with his presence. Rudd went home and curled up in his bed, positive that he was a waste of space who deserved the nickname Miasma Scavenger. By the following morning, he gathered his last shred of confidence and went to the guild hall to find work. He arrived, but it was busier than usual. The uninterested receptionist told him that a new dungeon had been discovered. This was an excellent opportunity to find treasure and magical items. Some lucky adventurers were about to become rich overnight. Rudd wanted to be one of them, but he was rather about to get poorer. The receptionist let him know that the guild would be buying the miasma grass for 70% less because no one was exploring the miasma maze due to the discovery of the new dungeon. However, the price might increase if the new dungeon was full of miasma. Rudd decided to head to the latest labyrinth to make some money, but the receptionist alerted him that a minimum requirement rank of D was needed to explore it. The scavenger was an E rank. He pled with her to allow him to go, but she wasn't about to break the rules for him. The leader of a D-ranked party overheard his begging and offered to hire him as their party's porter so that he could go. Rudd found himself in a carriage with his new team. The other members, Rick and Sasha, were not happy to have him on board, but Bayer, the party leader, let them know that he was a little better than a complete rookie. They confirmed Rudd's stats through his adventurer card. He had the ability to use fire magic, but it was only useful enough to light fires and nothing more. Bayer was looking forward to working with him regardless. Within a couple of hours, the party arrived at the Aberio maze, thinking they were the first ones there since they didn't see anyone outside. The team opened the heavy door to find the first floor busier than the market in central India. Sasha held her head in despair because there were adventurers with chests full of loot. It was clear that the first floor had already been explored. They would have to go deeper if they would want to get anything out of this run. Rudd suggested that it'd be better to map out the first floor. Rick and Sasha roasted him for opening his low-level mouth. They reminded him that he was just their mule and added further emotional damage by calling him an old man. Bayer ordered them to stop picking on him, but he did agree that they needed to get to the lower levels and assured Rudd that they would retreat if they came across any unexpected danger. The scavenger was taken aback by how strong his new team members were, as they easily dealt with monsters he couldn't defeat in his dreams. The party was feeling good with the little loot they had gathered so far. Rick wanted to bother Rudd, so ordered him to go harvest the materials from the monster they just defeated. He didn't care to hear the scavenger's explanation that its carcass was too messed up to recover any materials. Rudd swallowed his pride and got to work. The others joked around about eating monster meat because they were so hungry. Sasha commented that it was a taboo due to the unpredictable consequences of allowing mana to enter the body. Their conversation was shut down by a monstrous roar, and within a short moment they were faced with a minotaur. It was a creature which had a subjugation level of B, so it had no business being on an early floor. The party started to panic because they didn't stand a chance against this level of monster. Bayer asked Rudd to track its movement, while he removed an item from the backpack to help them escape. This was a big fat lie. The party leader cut Rudd from behind as soon as he retrieved the backpack. Rick drew the attention of the minotaur to Rudd, while Sasha used a haste spell to slap them to safety. Rudd finally understood that they only allowed him to join to be used as bait to escape a situation like this. The scavenger was left to fend for himself as he bled out. The Minotaur wasn't about to let him die in peace and knocked him through a wall with an NFL caliber charge. Unfortunately, there was a cliff on the other side, so the two went tumbling down like Humpty Dumpty. Rudd regained consciousness and was surprised to still be alive. The Minotaur cushioned his fall, but his arm was as mangled as crunched-up paper. He couldn't ingest any potions because they were in the backpack that Bayer took. There wasn't a concoction on the planet that could save him. Even if he could move, he wouldn't be able to survive encounters with the other creatures. Out of nowhere, an insatiable hunger took over his body, but the only thing available to eat was the body of the Minotaur. He laughed at the thought and was also worried about the side effects like turning into a monster or just disintegrating from the exposure of mana. All those doubts vanished when he recalled his role model telling him to never give up. Rudd took a huge gamble that the side effects were an abnormal state and started to devour the Minotaur. His wager was right. His skill nullified the side effects of eating the monster meat. His injuries healed and power surged through his body. The scavenger begun his ascent to the upper floors and realized that he could use the skills of the monsters he had eaten. He used the roar skill to stun some bats and cut them down with the Minotaur's weapon with enhanced strength. He continued to level up and stack up on monster skills like it was a stamp collecting hobby as he cut and ate his way through. Before he knew it, he was outside the dungeon. He let out a triumphant shout for surviving. Meanwhile at the guild, Bayer and his party put on an Oscar-level performance as they reported their encounter with the Minotaur. The guild master listened intently as they narrated how Rudd was eliminated before they could protect him. The dungeon was temporarily closed to allow an investigation team to reassess the minimum level required to explore the maze. The receptionist's nonchalant facial expression changed to shock when Rudd busted into the hall. His party broke into a cold sweat. Bayer rushed over with fake relief and discreetly warned him to keep his mouth shut if he didn't want to die. They tried to drag him out to have a talk, but were stunned when he didn't move an inch. Rudd told everyone what really happened. Bayer denied it, but the guildmaster was prepared and brought out a verifier to get to the bottom of this. They were individuals with the verification skill and were treated like national assets given their ability to determine falsehood and truth. He requested one from the capital since the death rate of the porters in their party was suspiciously high. The old man never expected their latest victim to survive and give an account. The verifier confirmed Rudd's reporting of the events. The guildmaster wasted no time and revoked their adventurer status and was sure that they would be sentenced to enslavement for such a despicable crime. Bayer crashed out and attacked the verifier, but Rudd blocked his attack, sending him flying into the wall. Everyone was speechless by the crater left from the impact. The guildmaster later took Rudd to his office, where further details of his party's fate were given. Bayer was probably going to get executed for raising his blade toward a verifier. The proceeds they gained from the Aberio maze was given to Rudd as compensation for what happened. He took it with joy and wondered how much herbs he would have to pick to make this much money. He also noticed that everyone was wary of him now after seeing what he did to Bayer. The scavenger made the right decision to keep a lower profile since he didn't want people questioning his sudden increase in power. The first thing he did was upgrade his equipment and treat himself to a good meal. He added a magic bag which allowed him to carry more items. Rudd later made his return to the Miasma maze for the first time since his power-up. He easily took out the rats that gave him trouble in the past and used the appraisal skill he gained from a Cyclops to check the stats of the rats he just defeated. It reminded him to check his own, and he was shocked to see that he had jumped from level 7 to 42. He also had a bunch of skills from all of the monsters he had eaten. It goes without saying that Rudd wanted to test out his new abilities, so he ventured deeper into the Miasma maze for the first time. He soon came across a level 25 dragonkin. They were known for fighting in a unit, but this one was alone. Rudd tried to ambush it, but it evaded his strike and lured him to a dead end where his buddies were waiting. The hunter just became the prey. He refused to be a victim and went on the offensive, but the lizards repelled him with that good old teamwork. At this point, more of the dragonkin had joined the fight. Rudd was suspicious of the complexity of their coordination, so he scanned the battlefield and spotted a lizard without a weapon. The appraisal skill revealed that it was the leader and had the command skill. Rudd cut his way through some of the monsters and targeted the leader with a strike of his blade. He was shocked that it did no damage. Rudd quickly realized that this was caused by a skill held by one of the other lizards, so he scanned around and found someone with the substitute ability. The holder of the skill was able to transfer the damage to himself. Rudd eliminated him, which sent the boss into a frenzy. He ordered everyone to attack at once, but the scavenger bound the monsters with a thread ability, which left them at the mercy of his blade. He exterminated them and reached into his magic bag to remove his cooking tools and seasoning. The guy was forced to eat the monster meat raw the first time since it was a life or death situation, but now he could take his time time and butcher the monster meat and cook it using his Michelin star chef skills. I'm sure Mukoda would be proud. He seared the boss lizard's tail like a food influencer and almost fainted from the deliciousness. He was bamboozled by how nice monster meat tasted when given the proper treatment. The guy low-key started a side gourmet quest to cook up every type of monster he slew. There were no downsides to his arrangement. He obtained the skills from eating the meat and got to enjoy good free food. Speaking of skills, he decided to also eat the lizard that had the substitution skill. The scavenger then proceeded and made fried snacks from the frogs and insects he electrocuted. His feast was disrupted by commotion. He was surprised that there were adventurers this deep inside the maze. Rudd packed up his stuff and rushed excited to share intel with them. He walked in on these cowardly guys ganging up on an elven woman. He overheard them talking about how much money she would be worth if they could capture her. Rudd realized that the dudes were criminals and confronted them. The elven lady tried to warn him to run because they were adventurer hunters. The scavenger had heard about such villains. According to sources, they were as strong as senior adventurers. Rudd tried to view their stats, but it was hidden. All he could see was their level, and the party leader was a level 65. He gave the order to take out the wannabe hero. Rudd blocked the first guy's attack and used his newly acquired poison skill to spit toxins into the guy's face. He rolled around in agony like he stubbed his toe on the corner of a wall. His crying soon came to an end when the poison ejected the life from him. The boss quickly realized that they underestimated Rudd and led the next attack with his remaining subordinates. Rudd narrowly evaded their blows as he got overwhelmed. He was whacked into the Miasma marsh nearby. The boss was impressed with his defensive skill since the kick was intended to break Rudd's neck. The scavenger retreated deep into the poison marsh to regroup. The criminals didn't follow him since they assumed he would eventually be forced to come out because of the poison. The boss realized that Rudd had immunity to abnormal states when he was completely fine after returning to shore. It was too late because the effects of the miasma had weakened the criminals as they waited for him to come out. The boss ordered his men to quickly slay Rudd, but he blocked their attacks with ease, then electrocuted them before cutting them with an air slash. The boss was confused on why Rudd was using monster skills. He gathered the remaining of his strength for one last assault, and surely enough, that was his last ever assault, as the scavenger shattered his blade and split him in two. He checked on the elven lady and made sure she was okay before they began their ascent to the entrance. She thanked him for saving her and was surprised that he wandered so deep inside the maze. Their small talk was cut short by the appearance of the queen moth monster. Rudd thought it would be light work and dashed in, but the monster hit him with a powerful air slash. He worriedly turned to the elf, but she was fine, so he decided to give the queen a taste of her own attack by stunning it with an air slash. The monster tried to paralyze him with the particles from its scales, but it didn't work on him. The elf ended the fight by hitting the queen with wind magic too. He got a bit coy when she asked him why he could use monster skills. The scavenger was saved from answering when the elf collapsed to the ground. She promised to explain her condition once they got out of the maze. The miasma in her system started to clear as soon as they reached the surface and rested under a tree. Before her sob story, she introduced herself as Alicia. Rudd recoiled in shock when she revealed she used to be an adventurer. The elf before him was Alicia of the Jade Storm, a member of Skytrail, which was one of the top S-rank parties in their kingdom. He learned that Skytrail was no more. Alicia revealed that 5 years ago, they challenged a monster in the S-rank dungeon called the Abyss Maze. Their leader got smoked during the battle. Another member had to retire due to the severity of the injuries they sustained. The last colleague got consumed by the maze. She was the only survivor, but the monster boss gave her a parting gift. It was a curse that gradually reduced her level. She was sure that she would die once her level reached 0. The adventurer hunters knew of her weakened state and tried to capture and sell her at a high price. Rudd thought about her situation, and the only option to break the curse would be to defeat the monster that cast it. Since the fall of Skytrail, no one had reached anywhere near the deepest floor. A way to lift the curse came to Rudd. He used the substitute skill to move the curse to himself, and it was nullified just as it seemed like it was about to consume him. He took a huge gamble that the curse was an abnormal state, so his innate skill would deal with it, and it worked. Alicia got emotional that he would take such a risk for someone he just met and gave him a heartfelt thank you. The duo went to town to celebrate Alicia's victory over the curse. She demanded Rudd tell her about himself, so he disclosed how his village and family were wiped out by a monster attack when he was younger. He was saved by an adventurer, which sparked his wish to become an S-rank adventurer. He wanted to do the same for others. Alicia was impressed and revealed her goal to get stronger to defeat the monster that wiped out her party 5 years ago. She also wanted to save that teammate who was still trapped in the abyss. Alicia suggested they form a party with the aim of achieving their goals. He was about to reject the offer when the adventurers that kicked him out the last time grabbed the elf's hand. They wanted her to join them instead of the loser. It was about to turn into a bar fight when Rudd stood up to them. Alicia proposed a drinking contest between herself and the instigators. She won with ease. Rudd transferred her tipsiness to himself, and his body nullified it since it was classed as an abnormal state. Alicia went straight to get more drinks to continue her celebrations. The elf wanted to eat the tavern's special Barona trout dish. However, the owner informed her that it was sold out because the lake where the fish lived in was taken over by monsters. The guild had been too busy to send out a party to deal with the mess. Alicia wanted to taste the special so badly that the duo took on the monster subjugation quest on the spot. They arrived at the lakeside pronto and found themselves surrounded by piranha-looking monsters. The creatures started to shoot water that Rudd blocked. He jumped into the water and unleashed a lightning attack that shocked most of them. He dove deeper to get the rest that escaped, but was met by a giant monster crab at the bottom. Surprisingly, it was spawning the juiced-up piranha with its tentacles. Rudd tried to retreat to prepare for the encounter, but the crab didn't want to wait for the altercation and grabbed him with its tentacles. He forced it to cut them off. When he shot some of his lightning through them, he started to run out of air, so Alicia dragged him out when he tugged on the lifeline they set up earlier. The duo went to shore, but Rudd wanted to return and defeat the crab before it recovered. The only way to gain the ability to breathe underwater would be to eat one of the monster's spawns. Rudd felt like he could trust Alicia with his monster-eating secret since she was vulnerable enough to tell him about her curse. He pled with her not to tell anyone about what she was about to witness and scoffed down the spawn like a kid eating fish sticks at lunch. Rudd didn't wait to see her reaction and jumped into the water to finish his fight. He jetted down with his newly acquired rapid swim skill and used the momentum to poke the crab with his blade. He released a chain lightning attack that slew the crab. Rudd popped out of the lake with the parts of the monster crab he wanted to eat. He thought she dipped when he didn't see her around, but she emerged from the forest holding logs for a fire. He was flabbergasted that she wanted to chill with someone that ate monster meat. The elf admitted that it was a shock to her, but she was happier that he trusted her enough to expose such a secret. Rudd was relieved that she was cool about everything. He caught some of the trout for her to try if she decided to stay. They set a campfire that night, and Alicia was blown away by the taste of the fish. She also confessed that the monster meat looked low-key succulent once it was cooked. However, it wasn't worth the risk to try it. The elf asked him again to form a party with her. Rudd felt like someone with her fame could find a better candidate than an E-rank loser like him. The elf needed someone she could trust her life with if she was going to take on the abyss. The monster eater made her feel safe. The scavenger finally agreed to team up after hearing her convincing pitch. The duo entered into their partnership with a successful quest completion. They later went to the guild to make everything official. The receptionist was in awe when she saw Alicia's adventurer card, but it soon turned to bewilderment when she realized that the elf wanted to team up with a well-known failure like Rudd. Alicia just told her to sign them up. She was eager to help the scavenger raise his adventurer rank, so wanted to know which requirements the guy was missing. A lack of monster subjugation was the main area that was keeping him at the bottom. Alicia asked for the most difficult monster hunting quest available. The duo found themselves in the forest looking for great wolves soon after. The elf used her spirit magic skill to summon her wind familiar Sylphid, who wiped out the first group of monsters. Her skill allowed her to cast stronger spells with less mana by tapping into the power of spirits in nature. Rudd was amazed that the single attack took them out all at once. Sylphid used wind magic to lift the duo out of harm's way when more monsters ambushed them. Rudd activated his sonic skill to locate the remaining wolves. Alicia rained down attacks on the locations he called out. This gathered the pack to one spot where Rudd put them to bed with a paralysis cloud. By that point, eliminating them was easier than Madara defeating Sakura. The elf noted that the number of wolves were too many for a quest of this level. She paused her worries so that they could wrap up and head back to town. Wind magic was used to allow them to fly back. They spotted a village burning and rushed to see what was happening. They met some fellow adventurers facing a Baphomet. The duo nullified its fire dagger with a water bomb. After getting an update on the situation, they told their colleagues to concentrate on evacuating the residents and leave the monster to them. The monster just appeared out of nowhere and started causing mayhem. The elf was sure that a Baphomet shouldn't be anywhere near a village like this and wondered what could have caused this. Rudd appraised the monster and licked his lips when he realized that it had wisdom of magic skills. He was sure that his pathetic fire magic would level up if he ate the monster. His first strike was blocked with ease, and he barely dodged the counter from the goat head. Elysia couldn't use a power spell to wipe out the monster since the residents were still around. Rudd would have to handle the main part of the fight. The elf cancelled all the Baphomet's magic attacks with her own. It cleared a path for Rudd to lump off one of the monster's arms. Elysia did some pre-cooking by hitting it with a fire attack. The wall of fire hid the results of the battle, so Rudd was able to smuggle his contraband meat to the forest to process. All the while, Elysia told everyone at the village that they managed to drive off the monster, but they were going to hunt it down before it attacked another town. The elf only wanted food as payment for their service. She later linked back up with Rudd, who had already prepared a stew with the monster meat. He tasted it to make sure the seasoning was right. Elysia tried to make it weird since he was eating a humanoid monster, but Rudd quickly realized it wasn't a big deal, because the first monster he ate was a minotaur. The duo got on high alert when stun pigs wandered into their camp. Rudd saw this as the perfect opportunity to try some combat magic. He stretched his hand expecting a fireball to shoot out as he shouted the spell, but nothing happened. The pigs dashed at them with blistering speed and knocked over the pot of food. Rudd was seething with anger, as Elysia let him know that she was low on mana, so couldn't support him much for the fight. The scavenger spent hours on the stew, so the pig had to pay by becoming the replacement protein for his dinner. The charge skill of the stun pig was formidable, so the party of two retreated for the time being. They took refuge in the trees as they tried to figure out why Rudd couldn't use magic. The elf initially thought that the guy was too dumb to comprehend the skill, but she realized that he needed to control mana particles to use monster magic. These were the particles that entered the body when he eats monster meat. Rudd recalled the power that rushed through his body from eating the taboo protein for the first time. He guided that power out of his body and boom, he shot out an epic fire spell at the stun pigs. To use monster spells, all he had to do was control the mana particles in his body. The guy guessed that he could use these particles to enhance his body and weapon. He turned the stun pigs into fried diced cutlets and attained the charge skill by eating it. It looked so good that Elysia was willing to risk her life to eat it. They were not destined to have a quiet night because the boss pig made an appearance and started to attack them. They were confused as to why such high-level monsters were out of the maze. Rudd got angry because the big hog knocked over his food. The hog had the upper hand after their first clash, so Rudd risked his life on his theory of imbuing his weapon with mana particles. He stood still as he gathered the particles into his blade. Luckily, he was able to complete it in time, allowing him to cleave the boss pig in half with one swing. He almost fainted when his blade shattered into pieces. He fell into a mini depression because that blade had been by his side through all his struggles. The elf tried to cheer him up and explained that the weapon couldn't handle the amount of mana particles he infused into it. During that interval, Magnus, Rigurdo, and Lond were dealing with some rats in the Miasma maze after stealing Rudd's harvesting spot. Lond's attention was drawn by a sound and followed it. It led the party to a secret passage that had a chest at the end. They got hyped when they found a sword inside, but anyone with eyes could see that this weapon was bad news. Rigurdo was the only one with at least one brain cell. He noticed the mana emanating from the sword and wondered if it was a cursed weapon. Magnus was more concerned about heading back to town to rub their find in Rudd's face. A sinister voice instructed Lond to kill as the eye on the blade glowed. The following morning, the scavenger went to Master Doyam's workshop to show him the broken weapon. The smith knew immediately that he poured mana into the blade to shatter it, because the blade he forged wouldn't break that easily. Doyam was the only other person that knew about Rudd's monster-eating hobbies and the power-up he gained from it. The scavenger trusted him not to snitch. The blacksmith needed to know to make a weapon fit for his evolving skills. Doyam made it clear he had never forged a blade that could withstand infused mana particles, but he would need top-quality materials to make it. Rudd handed the magic stones from the high-level monsters he had defeated so far. The smith gave him a lone sword to use for now and warned him not to infuse mana into it. The duo went to the tavern to unwind, but Magnus and his party came to cause trouble. Lond suddenly collapsed as the blade started to possess him. It kept egging him on to kill, so he swung the blade and cut Magnus. He turned to attack Elysia, but Rudd blocked it while Elysia blew Lond through the wall and into the street. They soon realized that it was the sword controlling him when it absorbed Elysia's follow-up attack. It used that energy to further possess Lond with some tentacles. Rigurdo begged them to try and save his life. Rudd couldn't turn down the request and tried to use his substitution skill to take on the curse during their next exchange. Lond gained consciousness for a moment and pled for help. Rudd could also hear the screaming bloodlust of the blade, like how the Green Goblin mask was talking to Norman Osborn. Sadly, the curse had a strong headlock on Lond, so the transfer failed. The blade completely absorbed the mana from Rudd's fire spell, allowing it to complete the transformation. Alicia knew that Lan's body was lost after seeing this. She came in clutch and saved Rudd, who begun to get overwhelmed by the abomination. The duo teamed up, which created an opening for the elf to hit Lond with a devastating earth spike which narrowly missed his heart. It was obvious to Rigurdo and Magnus that their teammate was corrupted, and death was the only way to free him. They wanted to be the ones to do it, so Rigurdo tackled their friend while Magnus plunged his blade into his beating heart. The curse was broken. They cried as Lan's body disintegrated. Rudd retrieved the blade and was sure that hiding the weapon wouldn't guarantee no more victims. The cursed weapon tried to possess him too, but his skill nullified its influence, making it look like a toy. The guildmaster arrived just as the battle ended, and all parties involved were summoned to his office. Rudd explained what happened, which was verified by Magnus, who was still in a numbed state. The guildmaster allowed Rudd to keep hold of the cursed weapon since it didn't affect him. The chances of someone falling victim was 0 if it was by his side. He was okay with the guild taking him out if he ever got consumed by the sword. The master couldn't dwell on this incident for long, because they had bigger problems. Reports of monsters appearing outside the maze had increased at an abnormal rate. The duo testified their recent encounters, prompting the old man to reveal that it was caused by the Aberio maze. The investigation team that was sent concluded that the boss of the maze was a venom drake. According to historical records, it had a level over 70. The high concentration of miasma it produced had made the other monsters hyperactive. The monsters with weaker resistance to miasma were pushed up to the upper floors, which drove the creatures on those floors outside the dungeon. If this was left unchecked, a flood of monsters would burst out of the maze. The guild master wanted Rudd to use his immunity to abnormal states to help. The scavenger first visited the survivors from the investigation team and substituted any abnormal states they were suffering to himself. The guild master was amazed, but his mouth dropped to the floor when Rudd requested that only he and Elysia handle the venom drake. The monster had a subjugation level of A, and to make it worse, the dungeon was uncharted. The scavenger felt a small team in the miasma would give them greater mobility. The master allowed the duo to go after seeing the confidence in Rudd's eyes. He later apologized to Elysia for roping her into such a dangerous quest, but she lived for the thrill, so she was ready to fight to the death. By the following day, the duo found themselves in the dungeon, and it seemed like the venom drake had gotten stronger because the miasma-infested areas had reached the upper floors. Rudd saw Elysia struggling a little and transferred the miasma that had built up in her body so far into himself. She ended up holding his hand so that he could continue to purify her as they proceeded. Rudd detected a monster as they went deeper. They knew that it must be powerful to be able to withstand the thick miasma. The scavenger wanted to face the creature to eat it and to test out the capabilities of the cursed sword before their fight with the boss. They met a huge beetle-type monster. Its hard shell made light work of any earth magic attacks. While Elysia held it back, Rudd imbued the cursed weapon with mana particles and finally broke the bug's hard shell. He was impressed that it was still intact, meaning he could use it without fear. He asked Elysia to hit the blade with some wind magic, while he also imbued it with mana particles. The cuts he unleashed dissected the insect with ease. He quickly cooked the meat and ate it as they walked. He was happy with the weapon's performance, but wasn't sure if it would be effective against a huge creature like the venom drake. The cursed weapon got offended and demanded that Rudd feed it the magic stone of the monster he just defeated. The blade absorbed it and grew to the size of a great sword. The duo started to get on guard since they were 3 floors from the boss's territory. Unfortunately for them, the venom drake wanted to meet them early. It let out a roar that collapsed the floors above, forcing Elysia to zoom them to safety. They ended up in a large hall where they were confronted by the boss. Rudd checked its stats and its level was 75 with deadly skills and resistance to all elements except water and wind. The duo quickly came up with a plan, but the boss stalled them with a fire attack so potent that it melted the floor and surrounding pillars. The elf used wind magic to help Rudd evade the incoming attacks. He used this boost to land a strike on the boss, but the damage looked more like a paper cut than an injury from a great sword. Elysia followed up with a wind volley, but it didn't do much either. The venom drake pinned them down with some spikes it fired from its tail. All Elysia had left was her strongest spell. However, she would need Rudd to hold the boss off while she prepared it. She called all her spirit elementals and combined their power to fire a huge blast. The venom drake tried to counter with its own, but Rudd used his weapon to absorb it. The elf's attack hit and did great harm to the boss, but it wasn't enough to take it down. It was left to Rudd to land the decisive blow. He let out a roar and dashed in. The dark magic he absorbed had given him and his blade a huge power-up. He managed to land some cuts on the monster, but his strikes started to lose effectiveness the longer the fight drew out. The exchange ended with him getting smacked against a wall. He refused to give up and launched one last assault. He leapt up into the air and bounced off his webs like a WWE star. He used the momentum to help block the Venom Drake's fire blast. Elysia cooled him down with her water magic, just enough for him to get close to the boss to lump off its head. He landed on the floor, happy that they just defeated such a high-level foe. The elf joined him and admitted that she didn't think he was capable of such a feat, but she wanted to be at his side regardless. For the first time in Rudd's life, he felt like he could achieve his dream of becoming an S-rank adventurer. The scavenger harvested some Venom Drake meat after healing his injuries. The duo then proceeded to the core of the dungeon. It was a sight that not many adventurers get to witness. They had to destroy the core to prevent another Venom Drake from being born. The duo used the transportation circle to travel outside the dungeon before it fully collapsed. Meanwhile, at the guild, the master assumed that Rudd had failed when they hadn't received word of his return yet. The depressing atmosphere was dispelled when a report came in that Rudd and his partner defeated the Venom Drake and destroyed the dungeon. Guildmaster couldn't believe that someone who everyone saw as a loser ended up saving the city. The two were greeted like heroes when they returned. Later that night, they went to the woods for Rudd to cook up his monster meat. Elysia salivated as he seasoned and cooked the taboo protein like an A5 Wagyu. The elf had some serious meat cravings, so suggested they go to a good restaurant after he finished his feast, bringing the anime to an end. Thanks for watching. Now go level up. See you in the next recap. Peace.